My name is Casey, 67 years old and former owner of a successful construction company. That fateful dinner where my son beat me over unsalted soup was just the tip of the iceberg. Behind his rage was a calculated plan to take my house, money, and everything I built over decades. He thought I was just a weak old man, but what he never expected was how I would turn his greed into his worst nightmare. Let me know where you are watching from. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share if you have ever dealt with family betrayal. I built my construction business from nothing after returning from Vietnam in '73. Those were different times back then. America was changing, and I saw an opportunity in residential development as suburbs expanded around Chicago. Started with just myself and a second-hand pickup truck, taking small renovation jobs nobody wanted. First year, I made less than $6,000, barely enough to cover my apartment rent and ramen noodles. By year 3, I had hired 2 employees. By year 5, we were building our first complete house. The company, Casey Construction, grew steadily through recessions and housing booms. Nothing came easy. I worked 14-hour days, 6 days a week, for almost 2 decades straight. I met Margaret at a client's housewarming party in 1978. She was the client's sister, visiting from Indiana. Beautiful brown eyes, smart as a whip, and laughed at my terrible construction jokes. We married exactly 1 year later, and she became my rock, handling the books for the business while I managed projects. We were partners in every sense of the word. Andrew was born in 1983, our only child after Margaret had complications during childbirth. From the moment I held him, I promised to give him everything I never had growing up. My own father had abandoned us when I was 12, leaving my mother to raise 3 boys on a waitress salary. I swore my son would never know that kind of hardship. Maybe that was my first mistake. While I worked to build the business, Margaret balanced being mother and company accountant. We made sure Andrew had the best schools, summer camps, sports equipment, and later, a brand new car for his 16th birthday. College was fully paid for, including an apartment near campus so he could focus on studies without working part-time like I had done. Andrew had everything, but it never seemed enough. His 16th birthday gift, a new Ford Mustang, was returned because the color was wrong. His first apartment near Northwestern was too small, so we upgraded. When he graduated, we paid the down payment on his first house, which he sold 2 years later for a bigger one. I always chalked it up to ambition. Margaret would express concerns about his entitlement, but I defended him. After all, isn't that what parents want? For their children to aim higher? By the time I turned 60, Casey Construction employed 47 people and generated annual revenue of $12 million. We specialized in luxury home renovations and had built a sterling reputation across Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana. I was tired, though. Decades of climbing ladders and managing job sites had worn down my body. My knees needed replacement, my back constantly ached, and I was missing the joys of life Margaret always talked about. So at 62, I sold the company to my operations manager for $3.4 million. Not the highest offer, but he promised to keep all employees and maintain the company name and values. The money, combined with our savings and investments, meant Margaret and I could live very comfortably for the rest of our lives. Our home is my greatest pride. A 5,000 square foot property on 2 acres, just outside Chicago. We built it ourselves 15 years ago, customizing every detail. Currently valued around $2.1 million, it features a workshop where I spend hours crafting furniture, a garden Margaret designed, and enough space for grandchildren we hoped would come someday. 5 years ago, Margaret was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The disease moved fast, taking her in just 7 months. My world collapsed. 54 years together, gone. The house felt empty. My purpose vanished. Andrew seemed supportive at first, visiting weekly with his wife Stephanie, whom he had married 3 years prior. I never really connected with Stephanie. Something felt off about her from the beginning. Always evaluating things by their price tag, commenting on our furniture, asking about our investments. During one early visit, I overheard her in our kitchen telling Andrew, "When this place is yours, The first thing to go is that hideous kitchen island. Margaret had designed that island herself. After Margaret passed, their visits became more frequent. Every Sunday dinner, random weeknight drop-ins, offers to help with household tasks. At first, I welcomed the company, struggling with grief and loneliness. But slowly, I noticed their conversations would stop when I entered rooms. Stephanie would take photos of different areas of the house, claiming she was getting design inspiration. Andrew began asking detailed questions about my will, investments, and insurance policies. "Just want to make sure everything is in order, Dad," he would say. "You know, for your protection." The first truly alarming conversation happened about 2 years after Margaret died. Andrew and Stephanie arrived unannounced on a Tuesday evening. I had been in my workshop, building a cedar hope chest I planned to donate to Margaret's church fundraiser. "Dad, we need to talk about your living situation," Andrew began, settling into the living room sofa. Stephanie nodded along, that practiced sympathetic expression on her face. "Stephanie and I have been researching some excellent senior communities." "Senior communities? You mean nursing homes?" I asked, still wiping sawdust from my hands. "Retirement communities," Stephanie corrected. "Beautiful places where you would have company, activities, and most importantly, care if you need it." I laughed it off initially. "I'm perfectly capable of living in my own home. The doctor just gave me a clean bill of health last month." Andrew leaned forward. "Dad, you live alone in a massive house. What if you fall? What if there is a break-in? You are sitting on over $2 million of real estate that could be converted into safer accommodations." What they did not know was that I had installed a small security camera in the living room after noticing some of Margaret's jewelry had gone missing. Later that night, reviewing footage after they left, I watched them going through my desk drawers in the study when I went to the bathroom. A week later, Andrew brought over documents for me to sign. "Just some updated estate planning, Dad. My financial advisor suggested these changes to reduce your tax burden." The papers were not about tax planning. They were a deed transfer that would have added Andrew as a joint owner of my property with rights of survivorship, essentially giving him control of my house while I was still alive. I recognized it immediately because I had helped an elderly neighbor fight a similar situation years ago. "I will have my lawyer review these," I told him, putting the papers aside. "Dad, that is a waste of money," Andrew objected. "These are standard forms." "Nevertheless," I insisted. His face reddened in that way it did when he was a teenager denied something he wanted. A month later, Stephanie called about helping with my banking. "Andrew and I worry about online scams targeting seniors," she explained. "We could set up a joint account to monitor for suspicious activity." I declined politely, saying my bank had excellent security measures. What I did not tell her was that I had already spoken with my banker about preventing unauthorized access to my accounts. During a Sunday dinner, I excused myself early, claiming fatigue, but actually went to my bedroom and called Margaret's best friend, Nancy, who I had been close with for decades. When I returned downstairs for water 20 minutes later, I overheard Andrew in the kitchen. "His memory is slipping, Steph. Yesterday, he could not remember the name of his doctor. This is getting serious. My doctor's name is Richard Wilson. I have never forgotten it." On another occasion, I returned from a hardware store trip to find Stephanie taking measurements of the master bedroom. "Just curious," she claimed, when I asked what she was doing. "This room has such potential." Andrew began casually dropping stories about neighbors or acquaintances whose elderly parents had accidents at home. Jim at work, his father insisted on staying in that big old house. Fell down the stairs last month, broke his hip. Now he will be in a facility anyway, but with a much lower quality of life. I started noticing small things would move around the house. My medication would be on different shelves. The thermostat would be set extremely high or low. The stairs would have items placed on them that I did not put there. Were they trying to create hazards? One afternoon, I was at my computer researching retirement account required distributions when Andrew let himself in with the emergency key I had given him. Not knowing I was home, he went directly to my home office and began taking photos of financial documents I had left on my desk. When I confronted him, he claimed he was helping organize my paperwork. The most disturbing discovery came when I hired a computer technician to set up a new laptop. While transferring files from my old computer, the technician discovered remote monitoring software had been installed. Someone had been watching my online activities, including banking and email. The installation date coincided with Andrew's offer to speed up my slow computer 3 months prior. Neighbors noticed the changes too. Martha from across the street mentioned that Andrew had asked her to call him, not me, if she ever noticed anything concerning about my behavior. My old friend Thomas, who used to visit weekly, told me Andrew had suggested I was too tired for company these days. Gradually, I found myself more isolated. Andrew and Stephanie always had reasons why I should not attend family gatherings, community events, or meet with old friends. COVID risks for seniors, or you seemed tired last time, or the weather might be bad. Most alarmingly, I discovered Andrew had contacted an elder law attorney, not for my benefit, but to inquire about how to establish guardianship over an elderly parent deemed incapable of managing their affairs. I only learned this because the attorney was a former client who recognized our last name and mentioned it when I ran into him at a restaurant. All these incidents built up over months, creating a gnawing sense of unease. Still, I wanted to believe I was overreacting. This was my son, my only child, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, whose college graduation had brought tears to my eyes. Surely I was misinterpreting things. At least, that is what I told myself until the night of the soup incident. Last December, Chicago was experiencing one of those brutal cold snaps that make you question why anyone lives in the Midwest. Temperatures had plunged to 15 below zero, and the wind chill made it feel like 30 below. Andrew called to say he and Stephanie would come over for dinner since they were worried about me being alone in such dangerous weather. I decided to make Margaret's chicken soup recipe, a family favorite that always appeared during cold weather. The process was therapeutic, reminding me of decades of winter evenings with Margaret in our kitchen. I carefully prepared the broth, chopped vegetables, and added her secret ingredient, a little fresh dill. My arthritis was flaring up badly that day, making chopping particularly painful, but I pushed through, wanting everything to be perfect. In my distraction with the pain and memories, I completely forgot to add salt to the soup, a simple oversight, something that could be easily remedied at the table. When Andrew and Stephanie arrived, they seemed particularly tense. Andrew kept checking his phone, while Stephanie walked around the house, making comments about what furniture would need to go and how spaces could be updated. We sat down to dinner around 6. I served the soup with fresh bread I had baked that morning. Andrew took one spoonful and his expression darkened immediately. "Dad, this soup has no salt. It is completely bland," he said, dropping his spoon with a clatter. "Oh, I apologize," I said, reaching for the salt shaker. "I forgot to add it while cooking. My hands were hurting today." "Forgot? You forgot something this basic?" His tone was incredulous, as if I had committed some grievous crime. "This is exactly what I have been talking about, Stephanie. He cannot even follow a simple recipe anymore." "Andrew, it is just salt," I said, confused by the overreaction. "Everyone can add it to taste." "Just salt? Mom never would have served something this thoughtless," he snapped. "She took pride in her cooking, in her home. Look at this place now. Dusty bookshelves, messy kitchen, pills scattered everywhere. You are letting everything she built fall apart." The mention of Margaret like this, weaponized against me, sparked something. "Your mother would be appalled at how you are speaking to me right now. Over salt, Andrew. Salt." He stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is not about salt. This is about you being unable to care for yourself but being too stubborn to admit it. I am perfectly capable." "No, you are not," he shouted, his face reddening. "You are becoming a burden, Dad. A liability. The company I could understand you selling, but this house, your investments, they should be protected for the family future, not wasted on your remaining years." The room went silent. The truth that had been lurking beneath the surface for months was finally spoken aloud. "My remaining years," I repeated softly. "And what exactly would you consider not a waste of my money, Andrew?" Stephanie chimed in, her voice sickly sweet. "Casey, what Andrew means is that we could help manage your assets more efficiently. Perhaps sell this oversized house you can no longer maintain, move you somewhere appropriate for your age, and ensure the family legacy is preserved. By family legacy, you mean your inheritance, I clarified. Andrew's expression hardened. You worked your entire life to build something. Do you want it squandered on elder care or given to charities when you die? That money should stay in the family. It is my money, I said firmly, earned by my work, my sacrifices. Sacrifices? Andrew laughed bitterly. You were barely present during my childhood because you were always working. Mom raised me while you built your precious company. The least you owe me is financial security. I stood up slowly, my hands shaking not from age but from anger. I worked those hours to provide everything you had. The private schools, the cars, the college education without debt. Things I never had. Things that were your obligation as a parent, he shouted back. Andrew, enough, Stephanie warned, noticing perhaps that she had her phone out, subtly recording our argument. No, let him continue, I said. I want to hear exactly what my obligations are now, according to my son. Andrew stepped toward me, his voice lower but more menacing. Your obligation is to not be selfish in your old age, to recognize when you can no longer manage your affairs and need help, to not squander what could set up your grandchildren's future. Grandchildren, you have repeatedly told me you do not want children. Things change, Stephanie interjected. We have been reconsidering. It struck me then, what might be happening? Are you in some kind of financial trouble, Andrew? The flash of alarm that crossed his face confirmed my suspicion before he could deny it. That is not the point. He deflected. What happened? Bad investments? Debt? Is that what this is about? You need my money right now, not after I am gone. Dad, you are becoming paranoid, Andrew said, but his eyes would not meet mine. I moved toward the kitchen counter to sit down, suddenly feeling every one of my 67 years. As I turned, Andrew grabbed my arm roughly. We are not done talking about this, he insisted. Take your hand off me, I said quietly. Instead of releasing me, his grip tightened. Not until you listen to reason. I tried to pull away, and what happened next still feels surreal. Andrew shoved me hard. I lost my balance, my hip catching the edge of the counter before I tumbled to the floor. The pain was immediate and sharp across my side. Andrew, I gasped, more from shock than pain initially. Instead of helping me up, he stood over me, his face contorted with a rage I had never seen before. See? You cannot even keep your balance. This is exactly why you cannot live alone. I tried to stand, but he placed a foot on my chest, not crushing but restraining. Stay down, Dad. You will hurt yourself worse. Stephanie had her phone out openly now. We should document this, Andrew, for the guardianship case, to show he cannot safely live independently. The realization hit me with more force than the fall. This was not a spontaneous outburst. This was calculated. They were creating evidence, a narrative. When I tried to move again, Andrew actually struck me, a closed fist to my shoulder that sent pain radiating down my arm. I said, "Stay down." For several horrifying minutes, I lay there on my kitchen floor while my son berated me, listing all the ways I had failed, all the signs of my supposed incompetence. My hand was throbbing where I had tried to break my fall. My ribs ached with each breath. Finally, he stepped back. This is for your own good, Dad. We will be filing for emergency guardianship tomorrow. Tonight was the final proof we needed. They left me there on the floor, taking the house key from my key ring before they walked out. I heard Andrew tell Stephanie, "Give him tonight to think about it. By tomorrow, he will realize this is the best solution for everyone." After they left, I managed to pull myself up using a chair. My entire side was already bruising, and my wrist was swollen. But worse than the physical pain was the shattering reality. My only son had just assaulted me to gain control of my assets. I did not call the police that night. Andrew's threat about guardianship proceedings worried me. If they had been documenting supposed evidence of my incompetence, how would it look if I reported my son for elder abuse? Would I be believed? Or would it play into their narrative of a confused old man? Instead, I took photos of my injuries with my phone. Then I made two decisions that would change everything. First, I would pretend to be more injured and confused than I actually was, buying time while appearing to submit. Second, I would find out exactly what Andrew and Stephanie were planning, gathering my own evidence before making my move. The game had changed. My son thought I was a weak old man he could bully and manipulate. He was about to learn how wrong he was. When Andrew and Stephanie returned the next morning, I played my part. I moved slowly, winced with each step, and appeared disoriented and defeated. I agreed that perhaps they were right. Maybe I needed more help than I had admitted. The relief on their faces was immediate and unmistakable. "We only want what is best for you, Dad," Andrew said, his voice gentle now that he believed he was getting his way. "We will take good care of everything." For the next 2 weeks, they visited daily, ostensibly to help me recover from my accidental fall. Andrew told neighbors and my few remaining friends that I had become confused and fallen, which was why they were now overseeing my care. Stephanie began rearranging furniture, taking measurements, and making lists of items to donate or replace. They brought papers for me to sign, which I asked to review overnight due to my difficulty concentrating. Each night, I carefully examined and photographed every document. Their plan was comprehensive: power of attorney forms, property transfer documents, new will drafts naming them as sole beneficiaries, even preliminary applications for a memory care facility 50 miles away from my home and friends. During the day, I played the role of declining elder, allowing Andrew to speak for me during a visit from my doctor, appearing to forget small details, and acting grateful for their intervention. I made sure to establish a pattern of napping every afternoon from 2 to 4, which gave me time to investigate while they believed I was sleeping. One afternoon, while allegedly napping, I discovered Andrew had brought his laptop. Left open on the kitchen table while they went out for coffee, it provided my first major breakthrough. His email was accessible, and what I found confirmed my worst fears and more. Andrew had been corresponding with a real estate agent for months about selling my house. "Once we secure guardianship, we can proceed with the listing immediately." One email read, "The market in that area is hot, and we should be able to get asking price or above." Another email exchange with their attorney outlined the strategy. Document any instances of memory lapses, poor decision-making, or unsafe behavior. Photos and videos are particularly compelling. The more evidence we compile before filing, the stronger our case. Most disturbing were emails with a doctor I had never met, discussing my condition and potential medications that might make him more compliant during the transition. They were planning to drug me to prevent resistance, but the true motivation behind their urgency became clear in emails with a loan shark. Andrew had gambling debts exceeding $400,000, with threats of physical harm if not paid by the end of the quarter. He had also taken out a second mortgage on his own home without Stephanie's knowledge, and they were 3 months behind on payments. Stephanie's emails revealed her own agenda. She had already selected a waterfront property valued at $1.8 million and placed a contingency offer dependent on family funds becoming available. She had hired an interior designer and landscaper, spending money they did not yet have. I took photos of the screen with my phone, careful not to leave any trace of my discovery. When they returned, I was back in bed, pretending to just wake up from my nap, groggy and confused as they had come to expect. That evening, after they left, I called Thomas Johnson, my oldest friend and a retired attorney who had been told by Andrew that I was too confused for visitors. I explained everything, showing him my evidence and the bruises that were still visible from the assault. "This is clear elder abuse, Casey," Thomas said grimly. "Financial exploitation, physical assault, isolation tactics, classic signs. I need to be strategic," I told him. "If I simply call the police or Adult Protective Services now, they have their narrative in place. I need irrefutable proof of their intentions." Thomas helped me develop a plan. First, we had a full medical evaluation done by an independent geriatric specialist who documented my excellent cognitive function, undermining any claim of mental decline. We secretly installed additional cameras in my home with audio recording capabilities in states where single-party consent is legal. Most importantly, we began building a team of advocates. Thomas's former law partners specializing in elder law, a forensic accountant to trace Andrew's financial dealings, and an investigator to document the broader pattern of abuse. While this team worked quietly, I continued playing the role of declining father. I signed some of their less consequential documents, allowing them to believe their plan was progressing. Each small victory made them bolder, less careful. A key piece of evidence came when I secretly recorded Andrew on the phone with his bookie, explicitly stating he would have access to over $2 million in real estate equity within a month to cover his debts. In another recorded conversation, Stephanie told her mother, "Once we get the old man into a facility, we will never have to worry about money again." Through the forensic accountant, we discovered they had already spent money that was not theirs, taking out loans against the expected proceeds from my estate. They had created a shell company that would manage my assets during guardianship, with fee structures designed to drain my accounts directly into theirs. One of the most painful discoveries was learning they had visited 3 budget nursing homes, all with documented care violations, seeking the cheapest option to place me in. Meanwhile, Stephanie had Pinterest boards planning how she would redecorate my bedroom into a luxury spa retreat. As weeks passed, my team of advocates built an airtight case. We had documentation of financial exploitation, physical abuse, medical consultation without consent, and conspiracy to commit fraud. But I wanted more than just evidence. I wanted Andrew to face the full weight of his betrayal. My opportunity came when Andrew mentioned bringing his attorney to the house to finalize the guardianship paperwork. "Just a few signatures, Dad, and then you will not have to worry about anything anymore." With Thomas's guidance, I agreed, setting the stage for the final act in a plan that would turn my son's greed into his worst nightmare. The meeting was set for a Tuesday morning at 10. Andrew and Stephanie arrived early, making final preparations, removing family photos from walls, already treating my home as their possession. Andrew's attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Linda Grayson, arrived precisely at 10, carrying a leather portfolio filled with documents. What they did not expect were the other attendees. Thomas, 2 of his law partners, my doctor with my complete cognitive assessment, and a court-appointed witness to document the proceedings. I had arranged for them to enter through the back door with a key Thomas had kept. The look of shock on Andrew's face when we all walked into the living room together is something I will never forget. "Dad, what is this?" he demanded, jumping to his feet. "Who are these people? Please, sit down, Andrew," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Gone was the stooped posture and confused expression I had been affecting. "These are my advocates, here to discuss your plans for my money and property." Linda Grayson glanced between Andrew and me, clearly sensing something was wrong. "Mr. Parker, I was under the impression this was a simple signing for a voluntary guardianship arrangement." "There is nothing voluntary about what my son has been planning," I replied calmly, "and I believe you should know exactly what you have become involved in." Over the next hour, my team methodically presented the evidence we had gathered. The emails planning to sell my house, the consultation with doctors without my knowledge, the financial transactions and loans taken against anticipated assets, the recorded conversations about placing me in the cheapest facility possible while they lived in luxury funded by my life's work. Most damning was the video of Andrew assaulting me over the soup, which had been captured by the security camera I had installed months earlier. The footage clearly showed him pushing me to the ground and preventing me from getting up, while Stephanie recorded rather than helping. As the evidence mounted, Andrew's demeanor shifted from indignant to desperate. "This is all being misinterpreted," he insisted. "We were trying to protect him from himself." His attorney, visibly uncomfortable, began gathering her papers. "I think we need to pause these proceedings. My client may want to reconsider the guardianship petition." "Before you go, Miss Grayson," Thomas interjected, "you should know that we have filed a complaint with the State Bar Association regarding your participation in this attempted exploitation. We have evidence you were aware of Mr. Parker's cognitive assessment showing no impairment, yet proceeded with guardianship paperwork." She paled visibly before hurrying out, leaving Andrew and Stephanie to face us alone. "Why?" I finally asked my son directly. "I need to hear from you why you would do this to your own father." Andrew's face hardened, the pretense of concern falling away completely. "Why? Because you were going to waste everything anyway. Do you know how hard it is to watch you sitting on millions while I struggle? You are just running down the clock, Dad. A few more years and you will be gone. But that money could change our lives now. So, you decided to take what was not yours? To fabricate a medical condition? To physically assault me? You are blowing everything out of proportion, Andrew shouted. It was a little push. And you are old, Dad. Maybe not completely incompetent yet, but headed that way. We were being proactive. Stephanie, seeing no way to maintain their narrative, dropped all pretense. You do not need a 5-bedroom house and millions in the bank at your age. It is selfish, frankly. That money should be working for the next generation. The money I earned, I replied. From the business I built with decades of sacrifice. Sacrifice? Andrew scoffed. You loved that business more than you ever loved me or Mom. You were barely present my entire childhood. The accusation cut deep, not because it was true, but because it revealed how he had justified his actions. I worked to provide for our family, Andrew. Everything I did was to give you opportunities I never had. Well, now I need one more opportunity, he said coldly. I need that money, Dad. I am in trouble. The gambling debts, I acknowledged. 400,000 to some very dangerous people, from what I discovered. His eyes widened. How did you? I am not the doddering old fool you took me for, I replied. I know about the second mortgage, the missed payments, the threats. I know about Stephanie's dream house that you cannot afford. I know everything. Stephanie turned on Andrew. You said we would not lose our house. You promised this was a sure thing. Their unified front crumbled as they turned on each other, revealing even more details about their financial desperation and the plans they had made for my money. It was painful to watch, yet vindicated every suspicion I had harbored. I would have helped you if you were in trouble, I told Andrew quietly, when their arguing subsided. If you had come to me honestly, as my son, not as a predator circling a wounded animal, you would have judged me, he muttered, lectured me about responsibility. Perhaps, I acknowledged, but I would have helped you anyway, because that is what fathers do. I paused, the weight of what came next, heavy on my heart. But not anymore. I nodded to Thomas, who handed Andrew a thick envelope. What is this? Andrew asked warily. Restraining orders preventing both of you from coming within 500 feet of me or my property. Copies of the police report I filed this morning for elder abuse, assault, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Notice that I have removed you from my will and established an irrevocable trust that you cannot contest. And a letter from my attorney explaining that if you attempt to contact me or access my finances in any way, we will pursue criminal charges that carry potential prison sentences. The color drained from Andrew's face as he flipped through the documents. You cannot be serious. I am your son. No, I said, my voice breaking slightly despite my resolve. A son does not plot to discard his father like an inconvenient burden. A son does not assault his father over soup without salt. A son does not see his father as nothing more than a checkbook. Dad, please, Andrew started, but I held up my hand. I have seen the nursing homes you researched for me. Facilities with multiple violations, the cheapest options while you plan to live in luxury. I have read your emails mocking me, discussing how quickly you could sell off my possessions, erasing every trace of the life Margaret and I built together. It was not like that, Stephanie insisted weakly. It was exactly like that, I corrected her. And now you both need to leave my house. Where are we supposed to go? Andrew demanded. Those people will come after us for the money. That is no longer my concern, I told him, though it pained me to say it. You made your choices, Andrew. Now you live with them. As they were escorted out by the private security Thomas had arranged, I felt no triumph, only profound sadness. In trying to steal my legacy, my son had sacrificed something far more valuable, the love and trust of his only parent. Later that night, alone in the quiet house, I wept for the first time since Margaret died, not for the betrayal or the elder abuse I had endured, but for the little boy who once rode on my shoulders, whose baseball games I cheered at, whose college graduation filled me with immeasurable pride. That boy was gone, replaced by a stranger, consumed by greed and entitlement. The question haunting me was, had I somehow created this monster through my parenting? By providing too much? By working those long hours? Or was it simply the character Andrew had chosen to develop despite my efforts? I had no answers that night, only grief and the knowledge that the next chapter of my life would be dramatically different than I had ever imagined. The days following Andrew and Stephanie's departure were a blur of legal meetings, financial restructuring, and security upgrades. Thomas moved into my guest room temporarily, concerned about potential retaliation. My team worked quickly to implement protective measures before Andrew could recover and attempt countermoves. First, we filed comprehensive reports with Adult Protective Services and the police department, providing all evidence of the physical and financial abuse. Detective Sandra Wilkins, who specialized in elder abuse cases, was particularly thorough, taking photographs of my still visible bruises and documenting the pattern of isolation and manipulation. "Unfortunately, Mr. Parker, what you experienced is not uncommon," she explained. "Financial exploitation by family members is the most prevalent form of elder abuse, but victims rarely report it due to shame or fear of family conflict. I was fortunate to have evidence most victims did not possess. The video of Andrew assaulting me was particularly compelling, leaving no room for him to claim it was a misunderstanding or accident. Criminal charges were filed against both Andrew and Stephanie for elder abuse, assault, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted financial exploitation. Their attorney attempted to negotiate, but the prosecutor, seeing the strength of our evidence, refused to offer any significant plea deal. Meanwhile, Thomas and his team helped me completely restructure my financial affairs. I revoked all powers of attorney, changed my will, and established an irrevocable trust with ironclad provisions. The trust named several charities as beneficiaries, with a small provision for Andrew that would only activate if he completed gambling addiction treatment and demonstrated 5 years of recovery and ethical behavior. "He will not likely meet those conditions," Thomas observed as we finalized the paperwork. "Probably not," I agreed. "But I want the door to remain open, however slightly. He is still my son." We also implemented exhaustive security measures. The locks on my home were changed, a comprehensive security system installed, and cameras placed at all entrances. My phone number and email were changed, with strict control over who received the new contact information. Financial alerts were set up to notify me of any unusual activity, and credit freezes prevented new accounts from being opened in my name. Perhaps most importantly, I began rebuilding the social connections Andrew had systematically severed. I reached out to old friends, neighbors, and former business associates, explaining honestly what had happened and why I had been isolated. The response was overwhelming support, with many expressing they had been concerned but did not know how to help. My neighbor Martha organized a rotating schedule of visitors and check-ins, ensuring I was never isolated for long. My poker buddies, who Andrew had told I was too confused to play anymore, resumed our weekly games in my dining room. Former employees from Casey Construction organized a workday to help with house maintenance and garden cleanup that I had been struggling to manage alone. The physical recovery from Andrew's assault took time. 3 bruised ribs, a sprained wrist, and hip contusion were painful reminders of his betrayal. But each week brought improvement, both physically and emotionally. I began physical therapy to strengthen my balance and overall fitness, determined to remain independent as long as possible. Throughout this period, we continued gathering information about Andrew's situation. Through legal discovery and the detective's investigation, we learned the full extent of his gambling addiction and financial mismanagement. He had lost over $800,000 in the past 2 years, far more than the $400,000 in immediate debt I had discovered. He had embezzled from his employer, taken loans from friends he never repaid, and maxed out multiple credit cards. Stephanie, we discovered, had been shopping for multi-million-dollar properties for months, telling real estate agents that an inheritance windfall was imminent. She had already contracted designers and landscapers, spending tens of thousands on plans for a house they did not own. With the restraining order in place, Andrew could not approach me directly. Instead, he attempted to use intermediaries, having mutual acquaintances contact me with messages expressing remorse and requesting financial help to get back on his feet. These were the same people he had previously told I was suffering from dementia, now suddenly enlisted as his messengers. One disturbing incident occurred when Andrew attempted to circumvent the restraining order by sending a stranger to my door, claiming to be a delivery person. The security cameras and my new policy of not opening the door without verification prevented this ploy from succeeding. The delivery person later admitted Andrew had paid him $50 to gain access and deliver a manipulative letter pleading for help with his debts. 3 months after filing criminal charges, we received notice that Andrew and Stephanie's home was in foreclosure. They had stopped making payments entirely, apparently believing they would soon have access to my assets. Andrew lost his job when his employer discovered the embezzlement, filing additional charges against him. Despite everything, part of me still ached for my son. I instructed Thomas to quietly gather information about their welfare, though I maintained the legal boundaries we had established. Through this monitoring, we learned they had separated, with Stephanie filing for divorce and moving in with her parents. Andrew was staying with a gambling acquaintance, sinking deeper into addiction as his legal and financial problems mounted. 6 months after the confrontation, my case against Andrew and Stephanie went to court. The evidence was overwhelming, and both were found guilty on multiple counts. Andrew received a suspended sentence conditional on restitution, gambling addiction treatment, and 5 years probation. Stephanie received probation and community service. The judge also made the restraining order permanent, ensuring they could not approach me or my property for the foreseeable future. The criminal proceedings were painful but necessary. Each day in court, seeing Andrew across the room, I fought conflicting emotions. This was my child, the baby I had once held in my arms with such hope and love. Now he was a defendant, his life in shambles largely due to his own choices. After the verdict, as we left the courthouse, Andrew tried to approach me despite the restraining order. Security intervened quickly, but not before I heard his words. "You have ruined everything, Dad," he called out. "I hope you are happy now." Those words solidified my resolve. I had not ruined anything. Andrew had made his choices repeatedly, prioritizing greed over family, seeing me as a resource to be exploited rather than a father to be loved. While I would always carry sadness for what might have been, I would no longer carry guilt for protecting myself. As the legal battle concluded, I focused on rebuilding my life and creating safeguards for my future. Working with elder advocate groups, I established the Parker Elder Protection Fund, providing legal assistance to seniors facing exploitation and abuse. The foundation became my new purpose, transforming my painful experience into something that might help others. I also made careful plans for my own aging process. I hired a reputable home health service for periodic wellness checks, established relationships with geriatric care specialists, and created advanced directives that clearly outlined my wishes for future care. These steps were not admissions of weakness, but proactive choices to maintain my autonomy as I aged. 1 year after that terrible night when Andrew assaulted me over unsalted soup, I hosted a gathering at my home. Friends, neighbors, advocates, and the legal team that had supported me through the crisis came together to celebrate not just my recovery, but a new chapter in life. As I looked around at the faces of people who genuinely cared for my well-being, I realized something important. Family is not just defined by blood. The betrayal by my son had not left me alone in the world. Instead, it had revealed a community of support I might never have discovered otherwise. My life was not ending in tragedy, but transforming into something new, meaningful, and surprisingly rich with connection. 2 years have passed since that fateful night when a bowl of unsalted soup exposed the ugly truth about my son. In that time, I have learned more about resilience, community, and redefining family than in all my previous 67 years. The legal battles eventually concluded with full vindication. Andrew and Stephanie both served probation, completed court-mandated financial management courses, and were ordered to pay restitution, though I doubt I will ever see those funds. More importantly, the case created legal precedent that has helped other elders in similar situations. The judge cited our extensive documentation as a model for how elder abuse cases should be investigated and prosecuted. My home is now truly mine again, both legally and emotionally. The security systems remain, but they represent prudence rather than fear. I have redecorated several rooms, not erasing memories of Margaret, but creating new spaces that reflect this chapter of my life. My workshop has expanded, with newer tools that accommodate my arthritis, while allowing me to continue creating furniture, much of which I donate to families in need. The Parker Elder Protection Fund has grown beyond my expectations. What began as a small foundation using a portion of my savings has attracted additional donors and grants. We now provide legal representation to dozens of seniors annually, conduct educational workshops on financial safety, and advocate for stronger elder protection laws. Last month, I testified before state legislators considering expanded penalties for elder financial exploitation. Perhaps the most meaningful development has been the formation of what I now consider my chosen family. Thomas, my oldest friend, has become more like a brother. His daughter, Lauren, includes me in all family gatherings, and her children call me Grandpa Casey, though we share no blood. My neighbor Martha and her husband Alan have a standing dinner invitation every Wednesday. My poker group, bowling league, and the men's coffee club at the local diner provide regular social connections that Andrew had systematically severed. I even found love again, unexpectedly. Nancy, Margaret's best friend who had been widowed herself for 8 years, and I discovered our friendship had evolved into something deeper. At our ages, we see no need for marriage, but she has brought laughter and companionship back into my life. Margaret, I believe, would approve. As for Andrew, information comes to me indirectly. The divorce from Stephanie finalized quickly, with her family's money providing attorneys who ensured she walked away largely unscathed. Andrew continues struggling with gambling addiction, having attended treatment only long enough to satisfy court requirements before relapsing. He has worked a series of increasingly menial jobs, unable to return to his profession due to the embezzlement charges. According to mutual acquaintances, he still blames me for his circumstances, claiming I overreacted to a minor family disagreement. 6 months ago, he sent a letter through his court-appointed therapist, the only communication channel permitted under the restraining order. The letter contained what the therapist described as an apology, though it was filled with qualifications and self-justification. While I may have overreacted that night, he wrote, "You have to understand the pressure I was under financially. No real acknowledgement of the months of manipulation, isolation, and planned exploitation. No genuine remorse for seeing his father as nothing more than a resource to be used." I responded with a brief note, stating that true reconciliation would require genuine accountability and demonstrated change over time. The door remains slightly open, but the path to walking through it is long and entirely dependent on Andrew's choices. The most profound lesson from this ordeal came to me gradually. Strength in our later years looks different than the physical power of youth or the career achievements of middle age. True strength at 67 means setting boundaries, protecting yourself without apology, and refusing to be diminished by others' expectations of what aging should look like. For too long, I mistook Andrew's vision of me as reality. A declining, vulnerable old man whose only remaining value lay in what material resources I could provide to the next generation. I had begun to internalize that diminished view, questioning my own competence and right to independence. The confrontation, painful as it was, forced me to reclaim my identity and power. I am not just an elderly parent waiting to pass assets to my descendants. I am a whole person with ongoing value, contributions to make, joys to experience, and rights to protect. Age has changed my capabilities in some ways, but not diminished my fundamental worth or autonomy. When I speak to elder groups now, I emphasize this message. Aging does not require surrendering your personhood. Planning for the future is prudent, but allowing others to define that future against your wishes is not. There is a vast difference between accepting help and relinquishing control, between acknowledging limitations and accepting unnecessary dependency. The unsalted soup that triggered Andrew's rage became symbolic of something much larger. He saw it as evidence I was no longer capable, justifying his takeover of my life. I now recognize it as simply a minor oversight by a person with arthritis pain. deserving of no more response than passing the salt shaker. How we interpret such moments reveals everything about how we view older adults. Are they vulnerable individuals to be protected and respected, or resources to be managed and exploited? The answer shapes families, communities, and ultimately, society's treatment of its elders. I choose to see my future not as a diminishment, but as a continuation, with new challenges and opportunities appropriate to this stage of life. I make adaptations for physical changes without surrendering agency. I accept help without accepting control. I acknowledge mortality without accelerating its timeline to satisfy others' impatience. Andrew's greed indeed became his worst nightmare, but not through any revenge I orchestrated. The consequences he faces are the natural results of his own choices, the collapse of schemes built on exploitation rather than love. My response was not vindictive but protective, not punitive but boundary enforcing. I still love the son I once knew, and mourn his transformation into someone capable of such calculation and cruelty. But love without boundaries enables harm. Sometimes, the most loving act possible is refusing to participate in your own exploitation, even when the exploiter shares your blood. Has my story resonated with your own experiences? Have you witnessed similar dynamics in families you know, or perhaps faced difficult decisions about setting boundaries with loved ones? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. If this video has provided insight or support, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit from knowing they are not alone in these complex family struggles. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your age may change, but your right to dignity and respect remains constant.